The courtroom was unusually tense that morning, packed with reporters, officers, and curious civilians. At the defense table sat Commander Alicia Grant, a decorated Navy SEAL whose calm posture contrasted sharply with the chaos surrounding her case. She wore a simple suit instead of her uniform, yet her bearing still radiated authority. Whispers filled the room, many laced with doubt, some with open hostility. Few believed the quiet black woman could be the elite warrior her record claimed. Near the wall, Officer Daniels watched her with narrowed eyes, jaw tight, as if her mere presence offended him. Daniels had built a reputation for aggression long before this day. Fellow officers described him as old school, though many privately used harsher words. He paced like a caged animal, occasionally glancing at Alicia with visible disdain. To him, her medals were political decorations, not proof of skill. He muttered something under his breath that made another officer shift uncomfortably. Alicia ignored him completely, eyes forward, breathing slow and controlled. Years of combat had taught her that tension was often louder than gunfire, and patience was sometimes more powerful than strength. The judge had not yet arrived when Daniels stepped closer, boots echoing across the marble floor. The bailiff frowned but said nothing. Daniels leaned over the barrier separating officers from the defense table. "You people always think rules don't apply to you," he said quietly, venom coating every word. Alicia looked up, expression neutral, eyes steady. She didn't respond. Silence unsettled him more than defiance would have. He straightened, face reddening, then laughed harshly as if to reassure himself he still controlled the situation. A junior clerk nearby pretended to shuffle papers, but her hands trembled. Everyone sensed something dangerous building. Alicia returned her gaze to the table, fingers loosely interlaced. She had endured interrogation rooms, battlefield ambushes, and survival training designed to break the strongest minds. A hostile courtroom barely registered. Yet she also knew unpredictability could escalate quickly when pride and prejudice collided. Her lawyer leaned toward her, whispering that the judge would arrive shortly. Alicia nodded once, composed, waiting. Daniels wasn't finished. He circled behind her chair, invading her space deliberately. "Funny," he said louder now, "how someone like you ends up a hero." The words dripped with implication. A murmur rippled through the gallery. Alicia's shoulders remained relaxed, but her eyes hardened slightly. She had learned long ago that anger was a luxury in dangerous moments. Control was survival. Still, a faint muscle in her jaw tightened, the only visible sign that his words had landed. Without warning, Daniels shoved the back of her chair. It scraped violently across the floor. Gasps erupted. Alicia's hands shot out, bracing the table before she could topple. She stood slowly, movements precise, balanced. For a heartbeat, the room froze, everyone stunned that an officer had openly assaulted a defendant in court. Daniel smirked, clearly expecting outrage or fear. Instead, Alicia faced him with the calm intensity of someone measuring distance, weight, and timing all at once. "Sit down," Daniels barked, stepping closer, chest puffed. Alicia did not move. She was slightly shorter, but her posture made the difference irrelevant. "You don't give me orders," she replied evenly. Her voice was quiet, yet it carried across the room. Something in her tone made several spectators straighten. It wasn't defiance, it was certainty. Daniels's smile faltered, replaced by irritation that quickly boiled into anger. He reached out and grabbed her arm hard, fingers digging into muscle. "I said sit." The grip would have immobilized most people. Alicia glanced down at his hand, as if studying a minor inconvenience. Then she looked back up, eyes suddenly cold. "Remove your hand," she said. There was no threat in her voice, only a statement. Daniels squeezed harder, as though determined to prove dominance. That was his mistake. In one fluid motion, Alicia twisted her wrist, pivoted her hips, and redirected his momentum. Daniels's arm locked painfully as she stepped behind him, applying a joint control technique taught in elite close-quarters combat training. Before he understood what was happening, his balance vanished. He crashed face-first onto the floor, breath exploding from his lungs. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the stunned courtroom. Alicia did not release him. She knelt smoothly, pinning his arm in a position that rendered him completely helpless yet uninjured. "Do not escalate," she said calmly. Her knee pressed just enough to prevent movement. Daniel struggled instinctively, but every twitch only tightened the hold. Years of brute force meant nothing against precision. His face burned from pain, shock, and humiliation. Other officers rushed forward, but stopped abruptly when Alicia shifted her gaze toward them. It wasn't aggressive, it was assessing, the look of someone calculating threats in real time. "I will release him when he stops resisting." The authority in her voice made them hesitate. None wanted to be next. None wanted to test whether the rumors about SEAL hand-to-hand training were true. Daniels wheezed, finally realizing he couldn't overpower her. "Get off me," he spat, voice cracking. Alicia waited another second, ensuring compliance, then released him and stood, stepping back with controlled grace. She kept her hands visible, posture non-threatening, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Daniel scrambled up, disheveled and furious, but something in his eyes had changed. Confidence was gone, replaced by disbelief. The judge entered at that exact moment, stopping mid-stride at the chaotic scene. "What is going on here?" he demanded sharply. No one answered immediately. Daniels opened his mouth, then closed it, realizing how ridiculous he looked. Alicia simply stood beside her chair, calm and composed. Her lawyer quickly explained that an altercation had occurred. The judge's gaze moved between them, lingering on Daniel's rumpled uniform. "Officer, did you initiate physical contact?" the judge asked. Daniels hesitated, just long enough to answer the question without speaking. The silence was damning. Alicia said nothing, refusing to embellish. She didn't need to. Several witnesses had already begun whispering to court staff. The judge's expression darkened. "This is a courtroom, not a street corner," he said sternly. "Any further misconduct will result in contempt charges." Daniels nodded stiffly, face pale beneath the redness. He avoided Alicia's eyes completely now. The power dynamic had flipped, not through shouting, but through undeniable demonstration. Proceedings resumed, but the atmosphere had transformed. Where there had been skepticism, there was now wary respect. Alicia listened attentively, occasionally taking notes, posture perfect. Daniels remained at the wall, unusually still, as if afraid movement might attract attention. Every so often he flexed his arm, wincing slightly, a reminder of how quickly control had been taken from him. During a recess, reporters flooded the hallway, voices buzzing with excitement. "Did you see that?" one whispered. "She dropped him like nothing." Security struggled to maintain order. Inside the courtroom, Alicia sat quietly, sipping water. Her pulse had long since returned to baseline. Combat had taught her that adrenaline fades, but consequences remain. Her lawyer leaned closer. "You handled that remarkably." Alicia gave a small shrug. "I asked him to remove his hand." The simplicity of her statement carried more weight than any dramatic retelling. To her, the incident wasn't heroic, just necessary. Across the room, Daniels sat alone, staring at the floor. Pride battled reality inside him. He had expected fear, submission, maybe outrage, not professional restraint paired with overwhelming skill. For the first time, doubt crept in. Maybe the stories about her weren't exaggerated. When court resumed, Daniels avoided proximity entirely. Another officer took a position closer to Alicia, though he kept a respectful distance. The judge noticed, but said nothing. Order had been restored, though tension still hummed beneath the surface like a live wire. Testimony continued, detailing Alicia's distinguished service, covert operations, hostage rescues, commendations for bravery. Each accomplishment chipped away at the prejudiced narrative that had fueled the morning's hostility. Even skeptics in the gallery began to see her not as an accused outsider, but as a professional soldier who had risked everything for people she didn't know. Daniels listened despite himself. Names of operations he had only seen in headlines were spoken as routine assignments. Casual descriptions of danger made his earlier bravado seem childish. He realized she had faced enemies far more lethal than an angry police officer. At one point, Alicia was asked to describe hand-to-hand training. She answered clinically, explaining focus on control rather than harm. Neutralize threats with minimal force, she said. Several people exchanged glances, remembering how precisely she had done exactly that hours earlier. Daniel's jaw tightened. She hadn't humiliated him intentionally. She had simply stopped him. That realization stung more than the physical pain. The prosecution attempted to paint her as dangerous, but the narrative faltered. Dangerous people don't issue calm warnings. Dangerous people don't stop once a threat is contained. Her restraint spoke louder than any testimony. During another break, an older veteran approached her quietly. "Ma'am," he said, voice thick with emotion, "thank you for your service." Alicia stood and shook his hand respectfully. The moment was simple, sincere, and very public. Daniels watched from across the room, expression unreadable. Something inside him shifted again, uncomfortable and unfamiliar. Shame, perhaps. When court resumed for the day, Alicia gathered her papers methodically. She didn't rush for the exit. She never rushed. Discipline meant finishing one task before beginning another. Daniels lingered near the doorway, as if debating whether to leave or speak. Finally, he stepped forward, movements stiff. "Commander," he said quietly. She looked at him, waiting. "I shouldn't have put my hands on you." The words sounded foreign in his mouth. Alicia studied him for a long second, then nodded once. "No, you shouldn't have." There was no anger, no triumph, just truth. He seemed to expect more, maybe forgiveness or condemnation. Instead, she simply turned to leave. Closure, for her, didn't require conversation. Outside, cameras flashed as reporters shouted questions. She declined comment, escorted by legal counsel. The crowd parted, murmuring with newfound respect. Inside, Daniels exhaled slowly, tension draining from his shoulders. The day had shattered assumptions he hadn't even realized he carried. Another officer approached him. "You okay?" Daniels nodded, though his pride felt bruised beyond repair. "Next time, maybe, believe the service record." Daniels didn't argue. That night, footage of the incident spread across media platforms. Analysts praised Alicia's composure and professionalism. Military commentators highlighted her technique, noting it was textbook control without excessive force. Public opinion shifted rapidly. What began as a controversial case became a story about discipline. Alicia, meanwhile, sat alone in a quiet hotel room reviewing documents for the next day. No celebration, no replaying the moment, just preparation. For her, the fight had never been personal. It was situational. Necessary. Finished.